let's find a nice comfy seat. Just looking for the ability to land, and then once we settle in, maybe we allow the eyes to close. We just feel the way that the respiration is interplaying on the inhale and the exhale. There's this very wealthy aristocrat who has this big, giant home surrounded by these beautiful, lush gardens. The gardens are clearly the pride and joy of the property, although the home is beautiful and large. But the gardens are the showstopper, the thing that everybody notices as they pass this house. We'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here just to feel into our respiration and experience our seat. When it feels appropriate for you, as it feels appropriate for you, we allow the eyes to open if they are closed. And we're going to make sure that our right heel is closest to our body if you're sitting with the legs crossed. And then we're going to plant our right hand on top of our right thigh and plant our left hand behind us and just energize that femur down. So really pushing with the right hand to pressurize the femur down and then rolling towards that left shoulder. Goal here is to create or feel some separation at the sacrum. So the more energy you can get, the more downward force you can create on the right side, the more opportunity to experience this. And then we'll relax back to neutral. Make sure that you resettle. We'll put the left heel closest to our body if we're sitting with the legs crossed. And we'll plant the left hand on the femur, pressurize down, right hand goes into the twist. Again, trying to create the sensation of separation at the sacrum. Following that right shoulder into the twist. Eventually, there's going to come a time when you feel balance left to right, and we'll allow the body to return back to neutral as that happens. And then let's extend our legs out in front of us for a little staff. Remember, the knees can bend here. As the legs extend, we're going to follow them forward into a fold. And really try to settle into a fold that is advantageous for you here. So the property of this aristocrat's property is surrounded by wrought iron fencing. And so as school kids pass by in the morning, they'll often reach through the fence and pick a flower or two. And sometimes as men or women are heading home from a day of work, they reach through the fence and they pick a flower or two. Oftentimes this aristocrat will be seated up in his third-story library, looking down, and he'll watch these actions with quite a bit of contempt. Last 60 seconds here. Last big inhale. Full exhale, release completely into your fold space. And we'll walk ourselves back up into staff. And from staff, let's bend our left knee and then make a determination whether it's appropriate for you to take the left foot over to the right side of your body. If you can land that left foot, let's do that. If not, we can keep the left foot just kind of with that medial alignment on the right inner thigh. And then we're going to plant our left hand, bring our right tricep or elbow to the left thigh, and work ourselves back into a nice little twist. Feeling our body's ability to respirate here. About softening the way you're breathing so that the twist becomes more easeful. Last 15 seconds. And when it feels appropriate, let's unwind the twist. We'll extend that left leg. Just a moment of balance before we head to side two. We'll bend the right knee and then make a determination whether it is appropriate for our right leg to cross over the left. Right hand comes behind us, left tricep or elbow to the right thigh. And we work ourselves into this nice assisted twist. Really slowing down and feeling the body rotate. Last 15 seconds here. And when you feel balance left to right, we'll unwind the twist. Extend our right leg to mirror our left and follow that into one more seated forward fold. Just be at ease here. And so day after day, this aristocrat would watch someone come by, reach through the wrought iron fence and pluck a flower or two. And so he made a determination. He was going to tear down the wrought iron fence and replace it with a giant stone fence, something that would provide a little bit more privacy and a little bit more protection for the garden. And so a company was brought in and compensated, and the work began. Nice, slow, fluid breaths here. We'll give ourselves 60 more seconds. Remember that the knees can bend. Goal here is just to find some level of expansion. Last 20 seconds. And when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring ourselves back up to staff. We're going to grab our blankets, towels, or bolsters, depending on what you have. And from a shelf fold, we're just going to go hot dog fold. And from a shelf fold, we're going to do the same thing, hot dog fold. Now, we're looking for a lateral bend here. So the blanket's the prop, better way to describe that, is going to run across the mat, and we are headed down with the rib cage expanding. If you know you want more and you're using maybe a towel and it doesn't have a lot of density, you could take that top prop and you could roll that. So you end up with a little bit more density and arc. Either way, from staff with the blanket or with the prop behind us, we'll bend the knees, let both knees fall to the left, and then really search for the middle of the spine as you extend out over this propping. Left arm here can serve as a headrest. Right arm, lots of opportunities. Can tuck behind you if you want a little shoulder awareness. You can extend that out anywhere in front of you for a little bit of additional support. And you can reach that behind your left hand, so to the left side of your mat, if you want a little bit more side bend action. And we'll breathe into this landing zone here. Really feeling the upper side, so the right side of your body, receiving each inhale breath. And so this stone wall proceeds to start going up around the perimeter of this aristocrat's property. And get about halfway done. Enough for the aristocrat to kind of see how the wall itself is interplaying with the experience of the outsiders. And he decides that it's not enough. He can still see the heads of the school children as they walk by. And every once in a while, one of them will prop themselves up on the wall and on the section of the wall that's complete and pick a flower. And so he tells this contractor that the wall needs to be raised. And so it is. Eventually, the entirety of the perimeter is walled in at this new, 8-foot high level. And this aristocrat feels like maybe for the first time he can appreciate the garden, the property grounds, with true privacy. And so he starts spending more time out on the grounds instead of up in the library overlooking the grounds. Last roughly 60 seconds here, excuse me. Feel that inhale portion of your breath expanding the architecture of your lateral edge on the right side. Last 20 seconds here. Feels appropriate for you. We're going to allow that right hand to help lift the torso. And as we lift the torso, we're going to adjust our propping so that it runs the same direction as our mat. And then we are going to follow this middle of the sternum down to the middle of the propping for a little bit more depth in a twist. Hands here can rest on the propping for a forehead prop, or they could be on the ground in front. They can be anywhere that feels comfortable. But most common places will be there. Head can either rest at neutral, rotated towards your right shoulder, or rotated towards your left shoulder for a little bit more depth in your twist. Totally up to you what feels appropriate. The only thing that I like to call out here is if you tend to have a lot of anterior shoulder collapse, if the proximal humeral head tends to just kind of fall here, sitting in a place where gravity is allowing that humeral head to just fall forward can be remarkably bad for the shoulder architecture. So if you feel like you have a tendency to collapse forward, just the subtlest amount of shoulder engagement stops that. It could be 1%. 1% is pretty hard to activate, but 5 to 10% is pretty easy to stay with. But just the smallest amount that you can offer completely resolves that potential problem. And then we're just slowly finding our way to respiration and expansiveness through that respiration. Last roughly 120 seconds here. So one thing this aristocrat starts to resent while he's spending time outside in his now private garden space, private ground space, is the disruption of voices, children screaming, children playing, people having conversations on their walks to and from work. So he calls back the wall construction company and he asks them if they can build this any higher to bounce the sound. And they tell him that it's just impossible to build a structurally sound wall any taller. And they say, we could make the walls wider. That would prevent even more sound. It would also allow us to raise them, but it would be extremely expensive. And this wealthy aristocrat kind of looks at the price, decides it's certainly worth it for peace. The peace he's gathered from going from wrought iron to stone has been significant. He figures any further expansion would be worth it. When it feels appropriate for you, as it feels appropriate for you, hands come down to the mat or floor. We'll lift ourselves up, return our prop so that it runs across the mat. And then we'll let our knees, we'll turn our torso and let our knees fall to the second side, the right side. As that happens, we are just going to, once again, find our way across our prop so that the center of the back can receive and lift here. And then your right arm can find its way to becoming a head prop, if that is appropriate for you. Really finding our capacity to relax in here. And feeling
how each cycle of respiration impacts that lateral bend to the left side of the body. Inhales that are deeply impactful. And exhales that are allowing you to relax, to engage more with the prop. So eventually, the walls around this aristocrat's home are made massive. They're almost 6 feet wide and 18 feet tall. They're so tall that they cast these massive shadows across the grounds for huge portions of the day. And many of the plants, the flowers, the shrubs start to become unhealthy, sickly. And eventually, many of the botanical life that made this property so beautiful start to shrivel away. Last 90 seconds here. Last 30 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, we can let that left hand come down and find the mat. Help elevate the torso enough so that we can rotate our propping so that the prop runs the same direction as our mat. And we'll slowly, gently, delicately lower ourselves down onto that prop structure. Same thing here with the head. We can rotate towards the right shoulder if we want to increase the sensation of rotation. We can keep the forehead at neutral, or we can be rotated towards the left shoulder. And same warning on the shoulder structure. Just a little bit of engagement at the shoulder girdle prevents any issue with anterior collapse. So just keep that in mind. And then we settle in here. So as the plants start to shrivel away, this aristocrat finds less reason to be outside in the grounds. Not to say he doesn't go outside anymore, but when he does, it's shorter time frames. And when he comes back inside, he notices that even with the huge, massive wall, when he comes inside, there's a sense of silencing, of quiet, of calm, of safety, of ease. And so he has another project. In the center of his home, he has a courtyard built. Small, contained, completely surrounded by the house. And this is a major construction project. But it eventually goes underway. And at great expense, this is eventually completed. And inside the courtyard, he plans for shade. And so he has plants put in that are shade receptive. And so he recreates this smaller version of the grounds outside in this centralized courtyard area. It's quieter. And he spends his time now, the outdoor time, in this little courtyard in the center of his home. Last 60 seconds here. Last 15 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, hands can press down into the mat. We'll lift ourselves up. Let's take the top blanket or towel, if we're using a blanket or towel, and place that at the top of our mat. So we end up with just a little elevation for the spine plus a headrest. And then we'll bring ourselves back to neutral. And bump your sacrum up against the elongated prop, and let's just lower ourselves down. We will not be here for super long, but a little counter activity of the shoulders. So allow the palms to face up and really think about getting wide across the shoulder girdle. We'll just breathe here for a moment. Again, this will not be a comparatively long hold. Give ourselves 40 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, let's bend our knees if they're not already, and we'll roll off of our propping structure. And we can just move those props out from being underneath us and let your body just relax against the neutrality of the mat for a moment. Just about 30 seconds here just to feel neutral. Feel how the hip girdle is sitting, feel how the shoulder girdle is sitting, feel how the sacrum is sitting, how the lumbar is sitting, how the thoracic spine is sitting, how the cervical spine is bridging between the torso and the skull. And when it feels appropriate, let's just start some lateral sway. So bring the knees into a bent position again if they're not already there. And then we'll just start to let the knees rock side to side. And we'll just try to find our body's ability to rotate here. Just really feeling our way into rotation. One of the things that has never really been a part of this community or this home has been big locks on doors. And yet, when this aristocrat is in the courtyard, he's often worried about some type of disturbance of someone coming to the front door or someone opening the front door. And so he has this construction crew come back, and they put this very large bar locking mechanism across the door. And they put it up nice and high so that no it's clearly visible. And so that's part of the thing is it's a visual deterrent. There's no confusing that this giant bar is across the front door. Next time the knees fall to the left, let's let them settle there. Ourselves 90 more seconds on this first side. Settling into the twist and being as at ease as is possible here. When it feels appropriate, we'll bring our knees back to neutral and let the knees fall over to the second side. And we're just fully able to relax and breathe here. Last 60 seconds here on the second side. When it feels appropriate for you, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. And let's pull our thighs in towards our torso. Give ourselves a nice little squeeze here. And then see if it's accessible for you to find your way to the ankles or feet for a little happy baby. Just allow the hips to settle in here. Give ourselves about 30 more seconds just to feel our way into this. And it feels appropriate, release and let your body come back into neutral and ask yourself if there's anything that you might want, that you might need, that you might benefit or appreciate before Shavasana. And if there is, let's offer that to ourselves now. If you have everything you need, if you have everything you want, then let's just find our way into a shape where we can appreciate some stillness. One morning, after a night of rain, this aristocrat goes into the courtyard. And the cobblestones that make up the floor are quite slippery. His feet kick out from underneath him. And he falls and lands directly on his hip. His hip shatters. And he has no way to get up. And so he crawls out of the courtyard into the house and to the front door where he has this huge bar that he can no longer reach. And so he starts to call out for help. And as it happens, there's a royal who's passing the house. And the royal has he's flanked by all these knights. And so one of the knights very adeptly hears this muffled sound coming from this giant house. Clearly, something is going on. And it's very faint. There's this huge wall, there's this huge house, there's this huge door. But the knight hears it and he takes off in that direction. Just let your body be completely at ease here. Just as at ease as you can be.
this night gets less than 2 steps away before the royal calls over and says, oh, anyone who goes through that much trouble to create privacy does not want us involved. And they carry on down the road. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes, into our wrists and our ankles, into our elbows and our knees, our shoulders and our hips, neck, head, jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of the body will move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition our way into a seat. And in the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. And we'll inhale our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that walls we build for security can very easily become imprisonments, and see how that impacts your experience? Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy